Alright, so this here is my mini pond. This pond has no mechanical filtration whatsoever. It's only run off of biological filtration and the filtration from the plants I have in it. So in here I do have some floating plants. I forget the name of this plant here, but I actually got this plant from Honolulu Black Sand Beach. It grows and propagates really fast, so I will be able to bring a couple of these over to the project potentially, because I have a lot of them. So I'm just going to take them out here so we can get a better look at everything. Alright. So this is a, gosh, what's it called? I'm not sure. It'll come to me eventually. It's a type of vine. I'm trying to remember the name of it. But as you can see, its roots right here. Those just sit in the water and the leaves stay above it. And that helps take out a bunch of nitrates and ammonia levels. But it needs to be planted in soil. You can't just throw it in the water and expect it to grow. So if we look back here, it's probably a little dark. I have set up some stagnum moss and some fertilizer pellets, and I've planted ferns in there all the way around basically the circumference of this pond, except for the front area, but all in the back it's all just these ferns up here. All these ferns have all of their roots going straight into this pond, and that's what keeps this pond so clean. And it also keeps me from having to do water changes on it. I don't do water changes on it. Every now and again I guess I do water changes on it, not very often. I will empty out just a little bit of the water and just fill it back up with fresh water, but most of the time I just let the rain fill it back up, and that seems to be just fine. In this little mini pond, I have a goldfish, which is probably like impossible to see, but that little orange speck right there is my calico goldfish. And then I just have some endlards in there as well. There's one right there. Some of the floating plants I have is frogbit and dwarf water lettuce. They're two of my favorites. They work really good and they're really pretty. This is a type of stem plant that I like to use. You don't have to plant stem plants. They can just float in the water column like all of this is. It helps hide babies for the endlards since they give off live young. I have quite a lot of that, and it's not looking the best at the bottom here because it hasn't gotten any light from these plants covering it up, so I'll have to take out a couple of those. But as you can see, like, these roots right here are taking out all those nitrogens and ammonias out of this mini pond, and it's providing the water to be clean. Now, there is a difference between mechanically clean and being biologically clean. A pond could be, or any tank could be crystal clear, but yet have awful water chemistry. So for this pond, oh, there's the goldfish. You can see him a lot better now. But as for this pond, the water is, right now it's really dirty because I just lifted everything out of there. So all the sediment at the bottom just rose up. Since I don't do big water changes like that, it does get dirty, or it can get dirty quite quick because of that. But dirty doesn't mean it's not clean. Dirty might just mean it's hard to see through or in. Fish can see it in it just fine. We might not be able to though. But I do know the water chemistry is extremely healthy, and it's providing an amazing ecosystem because I haven't fed this pond in about 2 months now, And my goldfish is even still growing. I'll catch him eventually. But he's doing really good. All the other fish in here are doing good. I'm getting babies out of them. The ferns and everything, and the ivy. I forget what kind of ivy this is. I have lots of mosses growing. I need to do a trim up. Been kind of busy, so I'll do a trim up on all of these ferns and these guys over here. But there's a bunch of plants in there. You can't really see them because the water's just all stirred up. But like all this, like this huge chunk of stem plants is just sitting in there, as well as all of these plants. And that's a lot of plants already, taking out a lot of the bad water chemistry. But then I have all this excess plants, removing it and growing off of it as well. And all of these plants here are also providing a food source for some of the fish, not necessarily as the fish eating the plants, but the plants will they fauna microbacteria with them as well, and it provides the fish food. So it's kind of just like a everlasting ecosystem, you could say, with it. And it's just kind of a good thing to know. And there's no water movement here. It's all still. And so yeah, mosquitoes do come over. They lay eggs and they hatch. But it takes the mosquito larvae 10 days before they turn into mosquitoes. And in those 10 days, all the fish I have in here eat them, as well as the copepods that naturally got in here, and seed shrimp, infansoria, all those little tiny micro and macro organisms that live in here. And it's one small ecosystem basically that runs off of plants. Because if there was no plants, I would be having to do a lot of work. Once a week, I'd have to come over here, change out the amount of, I would change half the water out, which is really hard, considering that it's 20 gallons buried in the ground. I'd have to put a pump in here, drain it out, fill it back up. But having a bunch of plants in here, and lots of rocks as well. I haven't mentioned that. There are a ton of rocks at the bottom of this little pond that have stacked up on one side. Now, these rocks provide hiding spaces for baby fish, but they also provide, since lava rock is really porous, it provides lots of spots for beneficial bacteria to grow, and that helps also with getting rid of ammonia, nitrates, and nitrites, just like what the plants do. Now, here are some things to know. The aquatic plants work really good already as is, but for them to work best, they need a amount of CO2 in the water, just like plants outside. They need that CO2 to photosynthesize and be able to soak up those bad chemicals in the water. So if they run out of carbon dioxide, the plants will start to die off. And eventually, due to, what's it called? Shoot, I'll think of it. But eventually those plants break down, and eventually those plants turn into detritus, ammonia, and they turn into CO2. And as that CO2 goes through the water, it dissolves in the water, and it becomes water-soluble CO2. And the plants absorb that, and they absorb the ammonia, and those plants regrow again. And it's this vicious cycle, basically, unless you have some sort of like bubbles coming up out of the water. Those don't add CO2, but the surface tension takes oxygen from the outside and puts it into the pond. Now, if we focus on the terrestrial plants, their roots are just in the water, but their leaves are outside, so they have an unlimited access to CO2, which causes them to grow better, faster, and that means they can also take up more nutrients in the water, causing the water to be cleaner than just the normal aquatic plants that are already in it. And it goes the same thing for the floating plants like the frog bit here. The frog bit, it's in the water, but its leaves are still outside of the water, so it still has unlimited access to CO2. Same thing with the ivy, and a couple of some mosses that are growing here as well. And that's kind of the basics to it, I'd say. So yeah.